Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, USA 90 Day Fiancé. Welcome to Update New Gossip. Julia Trubkina from 90 Day Fiancé Happily Ever After revealed whether her parents are on their way to America to live with her after she lost her dear family member. Julia and Brandon got married in 2020. Julia was unhappy with her living situation, which involved staying on Brandon's parents' farm. She adjusted to the new life, and Julia found a career in training the dogs that the elderly couple was breeding. However, Julia and Brandon had to deal with trust and financial issues, more of which will be documented during 90 Day Fiancé Happily Ever After Season 9. Julia recently shared a post on Instagram showing her with her parents and her brother. She revealed she was in Belgrade, Serbia with her parents but never shared the purpose of her visit. In the comments section, one of Julia's followers, @mygenevab, asked her, "Did you bring your parents to America?" Julia replied, "We will see," with 3 crossed finger emojis. However, Julia later shared an Instagram story showing her going to an interview for a visa with her mom and dad. Julia and Brandon have a long history of miscommunication, and it goes beyond her struggles with English. Before Julia moved to the US, she broke Brandon's trust by cheating with her ex-boyfriend. Although they were on a break at the time, Brandon never truly forgave her, even 5 years later. He has also disagreed with many of her major life choices, such as not wanting children and wanting her parents to come to the US. Julia's parents are divorced and often argue, which made Brandon uncomfortable with the idea of them living in the same house. He may have also been worried about being financially responsible for them, especially since Julia had not yet established her pet services business when they filmed The Last Resort Season 2. Feeling lonely in the US, Julia likely wanted her parents for emotional support. She applied for their tourist visas without telling Brandon, but he reacted as if they were moving to Virginia permanently. Julia has broken down in therapy and online, but rarely shares the full story. Recently, her sadness came from losing her beloved dog Simba to a stroke. She saw him as her son. With Julia openly battling depression, emotional support has become even more important, especially as Brandon remains distant and frustrated. While the couple may reveal more on 90 Day Fiancé Happily Ever After, Julia attending her parents' visa appointment alone without Brandon speaks volumes about the growing distance in their marriage and hints at deeper issues they have yet to fully confront. 90 Day Fiancé Happily Ever After star Julia Trubkina is no longer in the US following the untimely death of her family member. Julia is from Russia but was working in South Korea when she was introduced to Brandon Gibbs. Julia came to America on 90 DF Season 8 to marry Brandon and has since lived in Virginia. Julia often expressed displeasure with her living situation, commenting things like, "I go Russia," during arguments with Brandon. Immediately after her being announced as a 90 Day Fiancé Happily Ever After, Season 9 cast member Julia seems to have finally returned home. Meet my family. Julia surprised her Instagram followers with a post featuring her and her family members from Belgrade, Serbia. Julia wrote, "I think only I can bring people together who haven't communicated with each other for years," as a caption for the photos showing her posing with her parents and sibling. Julia appeared happy in the pictures after spending the last few weeks grieving the death of her dog, Simba. However, Julia's followers couldn't help but notice that Brandon was not a part of these family photos. When Hi_S Staging asked, "Where is Brandon?" Julia didn't respond. Julia moved to America in 2020 and married Brandon that April. It was revealed that her parents were divorced and couldn't get along. They constantly argued and couldn't even be in the same room together. Despite this, Julia still hoped they could visit her in the US. She longed to see them, but faced resistance from Brandon, who strongly opposed the idea. He made a big deal out of their potential visit, causing tension between them. Undeterred, Julia went behind Brandon's back and applied for her parents' visas without telling him, determined to reunite with them. It seems Julia's parents planned to visit the U.S. on a tourist visa, but Brandon opposed the idea. Fans speculated his reluctance stemmed from not wanting them to stay long-term or move in, potentially adding stress to his already strained marriage. Brandon may have suspected the visit was a trial run for permanent relocation, especially if Julia hoped her parents would help raise a future child. He also likely feared being financially responsible for them, further complicating his life. Their presence could have intensified existing tensions in the relationship. Julia gave up on the idea of becoming a mother after a doctor told her she'd never have a baby due to health complications. Though Brandon urged her to seek a second opinion, Julia didn't seem interested and instead embraced being a pet parent. The sudden loss of her dog Simba to a stroke deeply affected her mental health. She may have flown to see her family to cope with the grief of losing her son. However, it's unclear why Brandon didn't join her, or whether this new strain will feature in their 90-Day Fiancé Happily Ever After storyline. As Julia Trubkina from 90 Day The Last Resort continues to talk about her loved one's death on social media, her updates seem to be sparking concerns among her fans. Julia was first seen in 90 Day Fiancé Season 8 with Brandon Gibbs back in 2020, after she moved to Virginia from Russia. Julia detested living on Brandon's farm, but she also found her true calling there. Julia has made a career out of her love for dogs. A doctor told her that she would never have a baby, and she started calling herself a dog mom. Julia shared a post showcasing herself wearing a colorful maxi dress. She posed in her multicolored dress and provided fans with 3 different pictures of herself. She asked them to choose one of the 3 options. However, the caption also included an honest admission from Julia about her mental health. She wrote, "I need to come back to reality. Unfortunately, I have completely withdrawn into myself and my thoughts." Concerned fans like @LouSilderam reached out to her with comments like, "Hope you are doing good," and "Sorry about your dog." The fan also asked Julia how her family and her mom were doing. Julia did not respond to the fans' inquiry about her own health and well-being. Instead, she told them, "Thank you for asking. I will tell soon about my family." Julia has often spoken with cryptic messages when addressing fans. Her posts about her relationship with Brandon and now her emotional well-being are rarely direct, often raising more questions than offering clarity. Julia may struggle to fully express her thoughts due to a language barrier, which may contribute to the ambiguity in her messages. For example, she recently wrote that she has completely withdrawn into herself and her thoughts, a deeply introspective statement that appeared in a post that was focused on her colorful dress. The contrast left fans puzzled and unsure whether to be concerned or admire her outfit. It looks like Julia has something to say about her marriage and how she is coping with the loss of her beloved pet Simba. She should have had Brandon by her side as she grieves, but it appears he hasn't been a strong source of support. Julia seems to trust her followers more than her husband, choosing to share her deepest thoughts with them instead. As a reserved person, she appears to be doing her best to stay positive despite the heartbreak. While her fans are offering her comfort and encouragement, her husband seemingly remains distant and emotionally unavailable. Julia might be keeping her feelings private because she could be returning to the show in a new spin-off. Her distant behavior on social media, paired with subtle hints about what's really going on in her life, is nothing new. She hinted at a possible split from Brandon for months before eventually appearing on 90 Day The Last Resort. Julia may be speaking in riddles because her contract prevents her from revealing too much. Still, she seems to understand that when she truly needs someone to talk to, her loyal fans are often her closest source of support.